Well, welcome everybody to the Achievement Awards session. I'm Brian Wyville. I'm the chair of the Achievement Awards, and I'm happy to say this is my last year, and I'm handing over to Michael van der Pan after this. Our two Achievement Award winners, one from officially one from each of HCI and graphics, is actually slightly different. First of all, we have a graphics person, we have Pierre Poulin, and then we have Tamara Munzner, who very much bridges the gap between those two disciplines in her work on visualization. So I'm very proud to present Pierre Poulin. I knew his supervisor well, and he was a young upstart for many years and developed as a first-class researcher, as we all expected. And after 30 years, he has made an enormous number of contributions to computer graphics. The list is very impressive. It's all on the web page, but it's things like anisotropic reflection models, linear light sources, virtual relighting, animation of water in its many forms, procedural modeling of buildings, surface weathering, image-based modeling, and the list just keeps going on. A huge diversity of areas of research, all of which Pierre has some great publications in. I have to say that also his contributions to CHCCS and the graphics interface community in Canada over the years have also been amazing. And he could well have received our service award as well, but we thought in many ways we'll honor his research at this time. So it gives me a great pleasure to welcome Professor Pierre Poulin from the University of Montreal. Oh, by the way, he's also chair. How does he do all this and be chair? Pierre, over to you.
Thank you, Brian. That's a really nice introduction, and I think that's a nice way of getting into my presentation at the same time. So just in case what I will be describing makes you feel like I have some mileage or some values to it, you can see behind. If you're lucky, you'll find some the ways we used to print to do our presentation, or write with pencil by hand, or do 35 millimeters. All the various types of submission of animations that we had to do on Betacam, VHS, and Video 8. So that should bring in some respect that usually I don't get much from the undergrad when I show them that, and they say, what's that? So anyway, let me start my own presentation. So it's a great honor. I mean, I'm extremely proud of the Canadian presence and the Canadian contributions in computer graphics. And if you look on the list that I put there, is the previous award winner in computer graphics, and some of them are among my mentors and my idols. So being part of that list, or coming to be part of that list, is such an honor that I'm really humbled to be there. And honestly, this is kind of a shock, but great pleasure. And this comes not alone. I mean, definitely all this award belongs not to me, but to my graduate students, my numerous collaborators, and my mentors over the years. So that's definitely something that they should be proud of, contributing. And if you look at the third person who've been on that list, the first, Alain Fournier was my supervisor, and I remember being there in 1994, and it was really kind of emotional to give his speech of achievement, and for me to get a chance of receiving this one this year is kind of extremely special. Alain was very curious, creative, and intuitive, and all of that. He sort of fostered the idea of reading, analyzing those papers, debating, and I spent hours debating on everything. And the idea of how do we improve. For him, every student basically had to develop his own project with his guidance. So he sort of forced us to look at problems, to see a solution, and to develop our own unique angle on those problems. And so he brought us to be mentors for new graduate students and prepare us to be professors. And it was extremely strong, extremely kind, and quite funny. So being his student, or being a collaborator, or just meeting him, meant it was instant friendship, and everybody appreciated him so much. So he's dearly missed. And I sort of carry on his way of supervising students, and even when I went for a short postdoc in Princeton at that time with Pat and Ran, I had exactly the same kind of feeling of one graduate student, one project. And this is definitely, I mean, after so many years of being a prof, this is not the efficient way of supervising students. But it is definitely one of those ways of creating something new, to learn every day on something different. And so this is what I've been following for all those years. So usually when I meet a graduate student, we discuss about what is the goals of that he wants to have, what are the interests, the strength, the limitation, and then we run into proposition and investigations to find solution. I always say it is your degree, but it is our thesis. We're going to work together, and you're going to work with other students, and this is really important to us. So almost to the day, 1st of June 1994, I started as a prof at the University of Montreal. So that's 27 years ago. When I arrived, the Talman, Daniel and Nadia, who are also part of the list of the awardee for the achievement, had left already for 6 years. And 6 years in computer time means, nothing was really much usable for the graphics lab. So I had secured a fund of $60,000 to start a new graphics lab. So it was really exciting. So within the first month, I burned $60,000 with 2 computers. Indigo Extreme, Indigo 2 Extreme, and then ND. And I had a list of students waiting at my door saying, hey, I heard that you're doing computer graphics. I really would like to do research with you. So I was fortunate that Torna Studios in those days wanted to participate into sort of making donations to the lab, and they gave us 3 Indigos that make us survive the flow of students coming in. And so for about six or 7 years, I was the only graphics guy at the University of Montreal, and in fact, probably mostly in Montreal. So the positive side is that I was able to get the culture, the lab culture that I've been sort of appreciating so much in Toronto, in Vancouver, and even in Princeton. I had to build up my own teaching philosophy, and so people had no choice. It was me or nobody. And I had first pick on all those great students who wanted to do graphics. So it was really, really exciting. On the more difficult part, I mean, already having feedback about projects, papers, or grant proposal was not as trivial to do with email in those days. So I felt quite a bit isolated, but I sort of got around it and worked on it. So globally, I'm looking at my career, and I almost supervise about 100 graduate students. So we're talking about fewer PhD students. At the beginning, it took me a while to accept PhD student because it's an endeavor, and more master student, research master student. I also had a whole bunch of master 2 students from France being sent by their supervisor saying, well, you know, he's the greatest, best that we get. Can you train him a little bit so we can recover them to do a PhD later on. I had a few postdocs and visiting professors, but those are usually, I really work directly with all my students, and naturally to feed up the pipeline. I had to do a lot of internships, summer project with students, and that was very exciting. To pay for all those students would be almost impossible with what I had. I have a answer discovery since the beginning. I have a normal answer discovery, but I was so lucky that most of my graduate students were top students. So they had already fellowships. So they didn't have to go and find as much money as necessary. Still, I got some strategic CRD and various kind of funds. When the number of students started to grow and I could not handle the financial burden, grant appear. And so thank you to Kelly and all that kind of influx of topics and money. That was a great timing for me. So what's my career so far on publications? We have one book with Andrew, one of my best friend and best colleague, such a hard worker, and about 90 papers so far. I say journal and conference, but we all know that how conference became journal, that are really conference, but are journal. So, and as Brian mentioned, definitely service in computer graphics has always been dominant and really important. So we've been involved in so many conferences, organizations, journals. I did get the, let me see, yes, there. That's the Service Award in 2019. So I have the privilege now with Kelly Booth to be the only one to have 2 of those plaques. So that shows me much respect. And CSCAN is also there, and Grand and all of that. So to show you how old I am, those are, I call them my free mugs from SIGGRAPH. So every time you review papers for SIGGRAPH starting a certain year, you get a free mug. But you have to go to the conference and you have to find the room where the mug is. So that gets quite a bit difficult. So you can see a few holes that are still necessary to fill, but I feel guilty of getting a mug there that has not come with reviews for SIGGRAPH. Anyway, so looking at the trying to find what would be the main contribution that I had for this to deserve that award. I went to the Google Scholar and have an H-index of 31 with 3,800 citations, which is reasonable, but not stellar. I look at the first top papers that are cited on Google Scholar. And so I get the survey on shadow, I get SPH in animation, physical animation, anisotropic reflection, so rendering, and visualization for, so it's very diverse. And I think Brian was really right into that. I covered quite a broad range of topics. Since every student work on a given project, I cannot say also there is one system that we built up and that we made distributed to people. So what are those topics? So I took the titles of my papers and I put them into a word map. And you can see that some words come a little bit more often, like light, illumination, shadows, efficiency, interactive, but it's a little bit all over the map. So so I look at the papers and I try to categorize them. I can see that definitely I have about 50% of my contribution in as pure rendering would get. And then I get divided equally almost into modeling, animation, and visualization. About 10% of my papers have some flavor of interaction in it, so which fits very nicely with the CHCCS community. So what did I do to improve rendering? Structures, hierarchies. This is usually the 3 words that I give to my graduate students when they start to do graphics with me. Hierarchy, hierarchy, and hierarchy. Definitely one of the most difficult words to pronounce for Francophone. and even worse when Alain used to pronounce it. So, and we had pleasure just to put hierarchies in our titles just for that. Hierarchies for light sources, for objects, for rays, for occlusion factor, how to go fast, sampling in the right direction. So how we get those rays in the proper direction. I love rays carrying light. So all the specular light, the concentration of caustics that go everywhere, shadows that come from interreflection, global illumination, efficient bidirectional path tracing, and also some of those odd situations, primitives like a rounded edge, generalization of trees, how we can render subdivision surfaces. And Brian will be so happy to know that, yes, I did some metavols. So I deserve much credit for working on metavols. But from the beginning till even now, I'm really working and highly interested in the appearance of surfaces. So that's what I call my micro, meso, macro, where you go from a reflection model where you don't see any detail, but you see the behavior of how light is reflected off surface. So I started my master's degree on anisotropy, and it's one of my strongest contributions so far. But how do we measure reflectance? How do we compress it? How do we fit into reflection model? How do we develop those reflection models? Or even how we invert them to be able to sketch or paint or some highlights or color points. So that's something that I've been working on for years, and I'm still so interested in that. As you move closer to the surface, then details should be appearing, but those reflection models do not give detail. They are smooth, they are filtered out. So how do you reintroduce with some form of textured information that you can use to get those details to make them apparent? And one of the strong contributions with Jonathan Dupuis and Eric Heitz was the leader model, where we go from these fine detail, the reflection models, how do we integrate them together with distribution of normals, with shadowing factors, with the appearance, the color, the mixing of everything that, to do some kind of smooth transition from the scales of the dinosaur up to at a given distance. And that's something that always been very thrilling for me. And obviously, as soon as you get into GPU, procedural texture, perception of those details and all that, how do we use them to make things look older or torn, broken, and all that? And it goes up to how we go from real geometry, I mean, real objects, and try to find nice ways of approximating the global appearance as you move further away from the objects. And so now I'm working on cities with all the lights and all the interreflection within that. I also started my career looking also into real images to produce objects for computer graphics, to make it more real and more interesting at the same point. So we work on interactive system with Racon and Pomo to create some details, fine details. We're able to extract geometry, textures, some shading parameters, global illumination. I say radiosity because that's old work. I had two students, Emmerich Epstein and Martin Granger-Pichet. Actually, those are probably the only two who work on the same system. And so they work one on space carving, the other one on structured light. And the idea was basically to have a handheld camera going around an object and having a projector projecting some additional information onto that system. And so, I mean, even carrying mirrors that we can have different views from the projection and from the camera. So that was really, really captivating. And that led to the creation of one company, a startup. Well, now it's 17-year-old, so I don't call it startup anymore, but it's been very successful. So I've been part of it. And because I was part of it, I stopped doing research to just not have any apparent conflict of interest between my research and what the company was doing. But they did so many amazing stuff. Just to give you an idea, Singapore National Day, you can see that on that slide, it's in a huge stadium, and you have probably a few, say 150 huge box, and they are tracked and projected them to give some special effects. Franco Dragon has been designing and creating entire buildings in order to get one permanent show on location. So they used our system for tracking, projecting live video. Roger Waters from Pink Floyd in the old days has been using our systems to do live shows that are moving from day to day into different locations. So I'm extremely proud of those guys, what they did and how they did it. And that's probably, as I'm getting older, but maybe my first retirement plan, just to slow down space. So procedural modeling came when GRAN basically was created. That was my emphasis. How can we add details on surfaces? And that's really important. That was really important to me. And basically how we create waterfalls, painting world, learning distributions, so we can have some kind of a palette of objects that we can understand and create more easily. Luc Leblanc was working on a block system, very nice way of creating objects where we know we have surface parameterization just by putting blocks next to each other and getting details and subdivision surfaces and parameterization on the surface. He used them for procedural modeling of buildings, entire buildings, where we know what's inside, what's outside, how do we remove things, how we switch it. And he created a language to do interior and exterior fitting between those models. So I'm very proud of that work. I work also in modeling. I mean, we had some presentation on how important are the distribution of internal volumes for simulation into objects. So we had the conformal techniques, dihedral angles, work on geometry images or spherical representation with hill peaks, where we have even a high genus reduction. We could simplify thanks to that. During the wave of points, we had multi-resolution, that hierarchy again coming back to be able to add details, change things on the surface and create things. Philippe Baudouin was one of my best PhD students, also was so motivated and so animated. The idea of taking long sequences of motion capture so we can compress them, but also create, recognize different motion and being able to build graphs with variations in it, but also transition within them. We did facial animation of driving real animations from points on the surface. With Marie-Paul Kenny, we work on hair, where we can have basically a wisp of hair with physical detection, the size depending of the motion and all that. Work on fluids, SPH, probably Simon Clavet is one of those hyper active and motivating master student. This is the second most cited paper that we have, where he worked on SPH and all those particles and properties that you would get from that. So that brought up also hierarchical methods from two of my recent PhD students, how we can do up-res, going from a lower resolution simulation up to fine details with procedural splashes, with machine learning between those two simulations. How do we control those SPH? By creating waves, by capturing the motion of a given simulation to put it into a new simulation. And that was, to me, that's very exciting. hierarchies again into software. So when we have package that has different elements and all of that. So with my friend and colleague in software engineering, Wari Sarawi, we've been sort of building cities and looking at different problems in software engineering as queries into what can we get information on easily to somebody in software design or software correction and things like that. So that's something that has been very exciting to me. So if I look at my same thing, same strategy, the last name of all my co-authors, and I distribute them onto that word map, you can see that a few names come. I mean, Sarawi in the middle for the visualization, but also some of the colleagues, Ostromukov and Matthias Poulin, and some of my students. But you can see that there is kind of a few papers for each of the students, and basically that's about it. So that's a lot of students, a lot of colleagues and collaborators, and that's what I found so exciting to do when I was during all that career. So Wari Sarawi in software engineering. At Ligum, I was very delighted to have, at least for the time that they stayed within UDM, Victor Stromukov, who's now in Lyon, Derek now is Zarai. So Victor, talking about points, it's super exciting and so much of a pure scientist. Derek with so many students, so many projects everywhere. Bernard Tomaszewski, an intuition about so many problems that are so hard to solve, and then you get the SIGGRAPH paper and you say, wow, that's really impressive. And Misha Best myself, my new recruit and so far best colleague, of course. So I'm using the platform to do some special advertisement. We have a position, at least two positions, one in computer graphics that's going to be coming up, and one in HCI. So, you know, older students getting ready to graduate, young professors or young researcher interested to join a very active and fun group. Please tell them to look for University of Montreal. So my outdoor collaborators, Andrew and George Tekes from the master's level, we did Marie-Paul Cagny, Fabrice Nérem, Miki Oshinya, since my master's degree, sabbaticals where I visited a number of people. So exciting to work with them. Eric Paquet, one of my first PhD students, now still collaborating with. So looking at the time fly, I will not talk to you how old I am and how terrible the progress has been between when I started in '87 and what it is now, because everybody knows this is unbelievably fast. And also how things change in academia in the sense of how many papers and code that is available in a multi-author, multi-site papers that are now possible. But I'm not going to talk about that. What did not change is the quality of graphics in Canada for all those years. We're still so, I wouldn't say dominant because this is not the Canadian style, but we're still such strong contribution in international visibility for computer graphics. And if I look at the young colleagues and the young students presenting, this is really, really exciting to see where we're going. What did not change? How time flies. This presentation, and also I'm sure that Tamara will be looking forward to for me to give her some lead. So this award, probably due to my entire career, I must be getting older because I have two of those. So that's probably a good indication that that I've been there for a long time. Not as much as Kelly, but definitely a long time. But I still have a few years. I'm still hoping to be in shape. So my immense gratitude goes to the CHCCS Award Committee, the entire community, the Graphics Interface Conference and the community coming, all the funding agencies, and top of all my students, collaborators, and mentors. I really appreciated all those years. I'm looking forward to the next 27 years. And if you have any questions, good luck. But feel free to stop me anytime, anywhere. I'll always be very happy to chat about graphics.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much, Pierre, for the great talk. We have one question from Deborah. So she says, must the people interested in your position be French speaking?
That's a great question. They must be interested in learning French to be able to teach in French within, say, 2 to 3 years. However, if you look at Michel, you can give him the microphone. He's going to be able to speak to you in French after a 3rd year. So he's top-notch and very impressive to see how people get to learn French. But I mean, very often the English side of the graduate course, the environment, the students are very often Anglophone. And as you can see, this is a large office. If somebody wants to be recruited to do computer graphics, that's not the size of the office you're going to get. This is my last Friday as a department chair, and I'm going to kiss goodbye to that great office, but getting a little bit more time for myself and my students, definitely.
Thanks so much, Pierre, and congratulations on the award.
Thank you.
Ryan.